There is a particular kind of financial harm that is almost impossible to identify from inside the situation that produces it, because the mechanism that generates the harm is indistinguishable from its opposite. The mechanism that quietly destroys many parents' retirement savings looks, from the inside, exactly like good parenting. It feels like love. It is motivated by genuine care. It is executed in moments of real concern for real people who matter enormously. And it produces, over time, two outcomes that its intentions did not include: a retirement that is materially less secure than it should have been, and an adult child who is materially less capable of managing their own financial life than they would have been if the mechanism had never operated. What I am describing is the structure of ongoing, unstructured, boundaryless financial support that parents in their 50s and 60s provide to adult children. And the revelation I want to build today is not that this support should stop, but that it is, in almost every case I have observed, structured in precisely the way that minimizes its benefit to the child while maximizing its cost to the parent. My name is William Grant. The central revelation organizing this conversation is a distinction that almost no one makes when they think about the help they give their children. A distinction between support that functions as insurance and support that functions as infrastructure. Insurance is support that activates in genuine emergencies, covers a specific need for a defined period, and then ends, leaving the recipient in a position to manage independently. Infrastructure is support that becomes a permanent structural element of the recipient's financial life, substituting for capabilities the recipient should be developing but does not need to develop as long as the infrastructure is in place. The distinction matters because insurance supports autonomy and infrastructure undermines it. Insurance has a cost that is finite and specific and knowable in advance. Infrastructure has a cost that is infinite, compounding, and almost never calculated by the parent who is providing it. The revelation is that most parents who believe they are providing insurance are actually providing infrastructure. And they are providing infrastructure not because they chose to, but because the natural dynamics of the relationship make infrastructure the path of least resistance from both sides. The parent wants to help and finds that continuing to help is easier than having the conversation that would end the help. The child finds that the support, once established, adjusts their sense of what is financially necessary for them to manage independently, which makes the threshold for genuine independence increasingly distant. Neither party consciously chose this outcome. It emerged from a series of individually reasonable-seeming responses to immediate situations, without any moment at which the cumulative structure was examined as a whole. I want to make this concrete through someone I worked with, whose situation I will describe not because it is unusual, but because it is representative of what I see with remarkable consistency. Her name was Loretta, 62 years old, recently retired elementary school principal with 36 years of career, someone who had managed her finances with genuine competence and whose retirement position, at the moment she retired, was by any reasonable measure sufficient for a comfortable retirement at the level she had planned. What became apparent in our first year of working together was that the retirement position was being gradually eroded by a flow of capital that her financial plan had not modeled, because it had never been acknowledged as a recurring cost. It had been acknowledged as a series of specific, temporary, individually justified responses to her son's financial difficulties. A 35-year-old who worked in event management, an industry that had experienced significant disruption, whose income was irregular, and whose expenses consistently exceeded it. The support Loretta was providing to her son had begun as genuine insurance, a specific amount for a specific need during a specific period of acute professional difficulty. This is a legitimate form of parental support, and there is nothing financially damaging about it in isolation. What transformed it from insurance to infrastructure was the absence of any defined endpoint and the absence of any agreed-upon conditions under which it would cease. When the specific period of acute difficulty resolved without the support ending, the support had become structural. It was now an implicit element of her son's monthly budget, something he planned around without planning to eliminate. And on Loretta's side, each month's continuation of the support was individually easy to justify, because ending it required a conversation that she had been postponing for 2 years, and that she feared would damage the relationship she valued most. The cost of this infrastructure, modeled over the 11 years between when it began and Loretta's current age of 62, was substantial, not because any individual month's transfer was large, but because the aggregate over 11 years, compounded at a conservative investment return rather than transferred to her son, would have represented a significant addition to the retirement position she had built through decades of careful saving. The support had not destroyed her retirement. Her retirement was still viable, but it had meaningfully reduced its quality, and it was continuing to reduce it, and no mechanism existed within the current structure to stop the reduction, because the structure of the support had no built-in endpoint. The revelation extends beyond the financial calculation into the developmental dimension, because this is where the cost to the recipient becomes visible in a way that the financial cost to the provider does not. Loretta's son at 35 had not developed the financial management skills and the income resilience that his circumstances required, because the support had consistently substituted for those developments rather than accelerating them. Every time a gap appeared in his finances that would have required him to negotiate a higher fee with a client, to accept a job that was not his preference, to renegotiate his living arrangements, or to develop income streams that supplemented his primary profession, every one of those moments was resolved by the support rather than by any of those alternatives. The support was not evil, it was efficient, and its efficiency was precisely the problem. It solved each immediate problem before the immediate problem had the chance to produce the adaptation that would have solved the underlying problem permanently. What I worked with Loretta to implement was a transition from infrastructure to a sunset structure, a clearly defined plan in which the support would continue in diminishing amounts over a specific 12-month period, and then end entirely, communicated to her son with sufficient advance notice that the information could function as motivation rather than as shock. The conversation that had been postponed for 2 years happened. It was, by Loretta's description, difficult for the first 40 minutes, and then clarifying in a way she had not expected, because naming the structure as a structure, rather than allowing it to continue as an invisible backdrop to their relationship, allowed both of them to see it as something that could be changed, rather than something that simply existed. Her son's response to the sunset structure, in the 8 months since it was implemented, has been the most instructive element of the whole situation. In those 8 months, he has developed 2 additional income streams he had been considering for years, negotiated his base fee with his primary client for the first time in 3 years, and restructured his living arrangements to reduce his fixed monthly costs to a level his variable income can reliably support. None of these steps required capabilities he did not have. They required urgency he did not previously have, because the support had been providing the margin that made urgency unnecessary. Loretta's retirement trajectory, with the support now ending, has returned to something closer to what she had planned. And her relationship with her son, the relationship she had feared the conversation would damage, is, by her account, more honest and more mutual than it has been in years. because the dynamic that the support had created was not, when examined, actually serving the relationship. It was creating an asymmetry of obligation and dependency that neither of them had chosen, and that both of them, when it was named, were relieved to address. Here is the reflection I want to leave you with, not a task, but a question to sit with honestly. For every form of ongoing financial support you currently provide to an adult child, ask yourself, if that support ended tomorrow, what would happen? Would it reveal capabilities your child already has that the support has been masking? Would it activate resources and adaptations that the support has been substituting for? Or would it produce a genuine crisis for which your child has no available response? If the honest answer is the first or second option, the support is infrastructure, not insurance. And infrastructure that costs the parent their retirement while preventing the child's development is, however lovingly constructed, the most expensive form of harm that good intentions can produce.